guest today. I want to welcome my friend and colleague, Kristina Stoural, who we're going to be talking about a great topic today. We're going to be talking about how to ask fantastic sales questions, ones that will actually land business. And that's because Kristina should know, because she is a fractional chief sales officer and is relatively new in this role. So Kristina, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. By the way, if we've got you live today and you're with us, just give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know you're here with us. I see William, I see Josh, I see Natalie. Welcome everybody. And so Kristina, tell us a little bit about your journey to fractional life. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for having me this morning, Nancy. I'm really excited to have this conversation and hopefully help other fractional executives when they're going out for a new client, or even just consulting their own customers that they're working on site for. So I have been in sales and sales leadership basically since I was probably born, putting it lightly.
And room selling.
Yeah. I also come from an entire family of entrepreneurs and salespeople, so it's just in my blood. And my last role, permanent role, was a VP of sales in a healthcare tech startup. And one of the things that I noticed in that organization was that they didn't pay close enough attention to their cost of sales and the cost to acquire customers. And so when things ended there, partly due to that issue, I thought to myself, for startups and small businesses who really have to be conscious about their tactics for building a sales organization and growing their customer base, the idea of fractional came to mind. I actually didn't know such a thing existed. I knew there were fractional executives in other fields. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot and see if I can help other startups and small businesses with that cost of sales in a way that, they may not otherwise be able to get somebody like myself, on a permanent ongoing basis, because I would require equity and, all of those things. And so working for myself as a fractional sounded like a great way to help startups and small businesses with that particular problem.
Boy, it makes so much sense. And even professional salespeople, as expert as they are, there are a lot of pitfalls they fall into, right? It's really interesting. So why do you think that so many companies don't really pay attention to the specifics and the KPIs around the cost of sales? What's up with that? Why do they miss out on that when they know they need to be looking at
that? That's such a great question. I'm just going to opine on that in terms of my experiences. I think it has to do with where the center of power is within executive leadership in most companies. Sales and revenue growth executives tend to hold a lot of power and sway. And so you may have another person within the executive leadership team who understands that they're spending too much and that they need to be more frugal in that regard. But they might be overpowered by that chief revenue officer or, the folks who are growing customers. That's one reason. I think the second reason is that in this environment that we've been in terms of this, utter growth in technology, you have a lot of companies trying to figure out what their exit strategy is or what their next round is going to be. And the only way for them to really do that, not the only way, but one of the ways that they're doing that is through showing customer growth. So they may be trading, super quick ramped customer growth for, more lean books. Let's put it that way. And so I think those are probably the two big reasons.
How amazing that is. So what you're saying is that the politics in an organization could impact the efficiency and the effectiveness of a sales group, as well as what's the main objective of the company currently. If it's being sold, acquiring a division, siphoning off a division, a lot of things could affect how the sales group is actually performing or how they go about performing. Interesting.
Well,
Well,
the other thing I want to add to that is that sales and the revenue team, so marketing, etc., they don't have a metric against that. And I propose in that scenario that the leader of sales and the leader of marketing both come together and own a metric around the cost to acquire customers.
that's really funny. The silos between marketing and sales. It's really, it's always like the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's just really very interesting. In every industry, in every company, it's just been like that. So the proposal you got is fantastic, but how to do that when everybody's got their own, wanting to look good, objective underneath there. But today we're here to talk about sales questions, and there are two different things we're talking about here. One is for the sales executives, for the sales fractionals who are working with their clients. What you just shared is very relevant because they're dealing with all of that. For people who are becoming fractionals like you and me, we now have our own sales issues. So we have to really get great at asking great questions, or we're just going to be pitching at people. So that's my first thing. That's the first thing I want to talk with you about, Kristina, is why do you think that so many people in the sales role are they know that they shouldn't do this, but they pitch at people like they're telling, not asking. What's the story with that? Why do you think that's so?
Yeah, well, I think the first part is lack of discipline around listening, and the skill of listening, asking great questions, but then listening intently and picking up on all of the cues that come along with how somebody answers a question. Did they answer it in depth, or did they just give you kind of a shallow answer or something that maybe they thought you wanted to hear? And so when somebody doesn't spend the time to kind of practice that art of listening, they tend to default to what they do know, which is their product, their company, and they're just dying to, put that out there into the conversation.
And I think that's really true. You said something really, I'd like to underscore it for anybody that is listening now or watching later. Are you going into your conversations with sales prospects already? You've already got an interpretation of what they're saying to you. Like you're hearing what you want to hear, not what they're really saying. So I would say that's a huge issue. And how could a salesperson, number one, identify whether they're doing that, and two, how do they fix it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is actually something I'm working with my current client on. And that is that ahead of a sales conversation, you definitely want to do a lot of research. And I think that's kind of table stakes, right? But in that research that you're acquiring to prepare yourself for not just that sales conversation, but the sales process in general, you do want to start to anticipate what their particular problem and pain is. And you can't just anticipate one thing, because then you're going to ask questions that, are biased towards this one assumption that you had. So you want to come up with a few assumptions, and how you may address them. And in your conversation, uncover which of your theories, or was it something else that turns out to be their problem. And you'll get better at that as you really dive deep into the industries that you're selling into and understand, the macro issues that they may be facing.
Could you give us some examples of that?
Yeah. So if I'm selling my own services, for example, I may want to say or anticipate that, a small business or a startup is, probably thinking about their budget. They're wondering how they can, staff accordingly with X number of dollars that they have to spend. They're probably also concerned about today's current economic environment. They might be concerned because they're seeing, housing prices go down. They might be concerned because, we have an uncertain political environment and what that might mean. So I would spend some time thinking about that client, that company, what they may be facing, and then make sure that I'm prepared to ask them to open up to me about how they're experiencing those macro issues.
So, what about the structure of your questions? Like, do you actually map out how to structure questions so that you get the most revealing answers?
Yeah. So I've actually developed a framework. I need to give it a better name other than the question framework. that's, that's what it has now.
Yeah, we can brainstorm on that one.
But I just recently developed my own framework as a way to teach my clients specifically how to think about the sales conversation and the questions that you ask. And you've got to kind of back up and start with the idea that the purpose of asking questions is to really get as much color and understanding about what's going on with them. What are they trying to solve for? And what is the level of priority that that thing holds within their organization? So the actual, grammatical way that you ask the question doesn't really make as much difference, although I would say, there are a few things. Whether it's the framework that you're using to, address you needing to ask a lot of questions during a sales conversation. So it's got 4 parts. The first part starts with kind of a universal truth or a universal statement. And that's, kind of like what I said before, is that, in today's uncertain economic environment, I'm seeing that companies have to be much more concerned about how much they're spending on their executive leadership. Can you share with me a little bit about how your company is addressing that particular concern? That's kind of the first 2 parts of the question framework. So you're starting with this universal statement that is pretty much undisputed. So you've got to really go universal on that. And if you can make it something that's really specific to their industry, even better, right? Because first of all, then they understand that something about their industry, and you're immediately kind of getting into a good vibe with them because you've said something that they really can't dispute and they have to pretty much agree with. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things that I recommend to all of my clients is that before they ever go into any kind of a sales conversation, that they do a lot of background research, both on their website, on LinkedIn, especially going to their business page, especially looking at every single post that as many of the employees have made, because you'll read a lot about, not only will you get the background or what's going on and that's new, but you'll get their language. Their language is, then you want to actually use their exact language in your meeting with people. So if they're talking about sales and you're talking about business development, you're going like this.
Yeah.
So you need to use their lingo. It's incredible how the lingo of an industry or a company can make such a difference in your being able to build that rapport with people, because they'll know that you've really, that you've grokked them, you've gotten them, that you're really aware of what's happening in their organization. I also want to go back to something that you said before about the pain points. I want to make a really big distinction for everybody that watches this or is listening now. There's a big difference between a pain point in a company and a migraine headache. I think I'm gonna actually copyright and trademark that migraine headache thing, because it is a difference between a nice to have and a must have. The urgency of a company is really critical. So how to dig under the hood for getting urgency. For example, if somebody's giving you a discovery meeting or a prospecting meeting and they're just sort of curious, that's one level of the relationship or the potential. But when they're in serious pain, and they're desperate to get assistance with it. For example, let me use an example of a company that's considering hiring a fractional chief finance officer or an accountant. when you are about to be audited, that's one level. That's a real pain. That's a migraine. But when you're potentially going to be audited, it's only like a little, the little twitch in your head. That's it. So you're not. It's not urgent. How do we dig under the hood for urgency?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because that's another, common pitfall that salespeople will, they get happy ears. They're like, they said they needed us
Happy ears.
yesterday.
Everybody listen to that. That's a really great one. Happy ears. Okay,
Yeah.
listen, that Kristina, that's awesome. Happy ears. Hearing what you want to hear, right?
Yeah, hearing exactly what you want to hear and not listening for those red flags. But, so when somebody says, oh, we needed this yesterday, or that type of thing, like this is going to solve a huge problem that we have. Oh, great. Can you share with me a little bit about who else in the organization has this same problem? And then they say, what they say. And then you can say, how is that impacting? So it sounds like you have this problem. It sounds like the CFO has this problem. How have you guys addressed fixing this in the past? And how long have you, been going, like this? And if they say, well, it's been this way for 5 years, obviously that's a huge red flag, and you want to dig into that a little bit more about, oh my goodness, it's been going on for 5 years. Can you share with me a little bit about your attempts in the past to fix this particular issue? And that's going to tell you historically how they've approached solving a problem. And that's probably going to be similar to how they solve the problem later.
Got it. Okay, so I want to ask you, because I know people are looking for some really specific tips and tools. What are your favorite sales questions? Or give us your favorite sales questions that are like not to be missed, like, maybe specific examples of your favorite ones that really uncover the truth. I'll give you a couple of mine.
Okay. So I think, I don't necessarily have a favorite question per se, but I have some favorite ways to create an open-ended dialogue. And that's actually the second part of my framework is, having that universal truth, then going into your open-ended questions, transitioning to show your understanding with a little bit of a story, and then confirming an impact, right? So that's the framework. But that open-ended question step 2, that's the most critical to really get them talking. And so one of the pitfalls that I see a lot, there's 2 actually. The first one is we'll ask, we'll fire off questions, right? How do you guys do this? Why is that done? Why do you do it that way? Things like that can ultimately put somebody on the defense right away.
They feel like they're interrogated, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so when, somebody's sales manager is like, you need to ask more questions, you need to get more information. And then you've got a salesperson who runs in there and starts who, what, why, when, where, like they're going to write an article.
Yeah, like a machine gun, right? Yeah.
They're not going to go far. And not only that, they're not going to get great questions. But when you start your question with intrigue, first of all, like, oh, can you share a little bit more about that with me? Or tell me more. So your tone, who else? Those types of things. Can you help me understand? And it's okay if somebody says something to you that's like total jargon and they're not thinking about it, it's totally okay to say, okay, this sounds really interesting. I want to make sure I fully understand. Can you help me understand when you said X? Share with me a little bit more about what you meant by that. Mm-hmm. Lean into them, get in this good vibe with the person so that they know you truly care about what they have to say.
I think that's really great. I love the tell me more is probably my favorite one. My second favorite one is I do the 1 to 10 question. Like, so just to sort of get like where you are on the continuum, on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of urgency, 10 being most, like it's a must have, and 1 being least, like it's a nice to have. Where are you in terms of urgency? And if they say 9, 8, 9, or 10, I go, oh, that could be happy years, right? But then I'll say, I would ask, if there's any hesitation, if there's any doubt in the way they answer, in the tone of their voice, or any hesitation in giving you the number, because they think that they're going to give you the answer that you want to hear, even if I never ask another question, I already know they're not taking action right this second. There's something in the way. So then there's another something in the way question to get into, such as, so it sounds to me like you really are, it's urgent for you, and what's been in the way so far? Like what would prevent you from taking action immediately? What would stop you? What would be in the way is a good one that I have found really, really works. And then tell me more is always good, because then if they answer your question, you're asking them to share deeper, and as soon as they go deeper, their own answers become more revealing.
Yeah.
I really like that a lot.
On that note, you said something that made me think about another important piece is really, if, let's say they're giving you a verbal move forward, then you really need to figure out what are those roadblocks that are going to derail this verbal agreement that I have right now. And a really great way to try to understand that is say, okay, great. Tell me a little bit about the last time you made a purchase like this. How did that process go within your organization?
I love that. I also on a corollary for that, I'll ask them, how are you going to make your decision? What factors will go into you making your decision? What's your feeling about when someone says, okay, this is great, give me a proposal?
Yeah, you can definitely get into happy ears when somebody says that.
Oh yeah, right?
Yeah, and most salespeople or people who are providing proposals, if they're not trained sales professionals, which by the way is a lot of people, right, who are selling on a day-to-day basis, but they're not really salespeople. This would be like founders who are starting up a company and things of that sort. So that is a pitfall that people fall into, is they think, okay, they've asked me for a proposal, so they're definitely serious, and all of those types of things that give us those happy ears. But you've really got to have some discipline to look for the red flags and to delve deeper into why they're asking you for the proposal. So, okay, great. I'd love to give you a proposal. Tell me a little bit more about what you're looking to see in that proposal. What are going to be the pieces of the proposal that are going to raise the most eyebrows within the organization and also be most impactful in the organization. And then they tell you that, and then really get a definitive process about what's going to happen post proposal, and try to get a second meeting or a next meeting on the calendar to review that proposal. Even if they're like, oh, just send it to me and then we'll get something scheduled, just say, you know what, I'd like to get something, on the calendar, even if we're going to have to reschedule it, just so, we can both give this as much, time and diligence as it needs.
I'm a lot more instructive than that. I'll say something like, great, I'm glad you would like to have more information. Would you like to put something on the calendar to review that? Because that's how we do it. In our company, we'll provide you with the proposal during a meeting. So they're forced to actually, if they don't want to set up the meeting, you can bet your bottom dollar it's easy for them to ask for a proposal. There's no skin off their nose at all.
Right.
So you're going to spend hours getting even if you've got people writing your proposals for you, even if you have a template for it, it's still your time and effort, energy, and attention. So I'm very opinionated about this issue about proposals. I think that proposals are a procrastination for a lot of companies. It's easy for them to ask. There's no skin off their nose. They don't have to do a thing with it. So I really like to guide my clients to say, we actually do verbal proposals. We'll get on the next meeting, go through all the points with you with a document. We'll review it together. And then if they're not willing to do that, it's good information. It's good to know. Then you don't have to one of my other questions that I really like to ask is like more the permission kind, like, would you like to set up another meeting? would you like to review some more details? Would you like to is an invitation to them. And then when they say yes, now you've got permission, but you can guide that would you like to in a way that feels very inviting, but also requires them to be definitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're coming to the end. Wow, we really went. This has been so much fun. So
this flew by.
Where can people find you? Where do they find you?
Yeah.
Learn more about your. What did you call it so far? The sales question. What did you call it?
Oh, my question framework.
Question framework. Let's work on that one. It's really great. So where can people reach you and find you and your question framework?
Yeah, great. I am on LinkedIn. So right now I'm pretty much running everything on LinkedIn. Kristina Stoural is my name, Kristina with a K. Actually, I guess you guys see it on the screen here. And the name of my company is Harmonized Sales Consulting.
Oh, I love that. It's a great name.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I actually just got my URL, which amazingly enough was available. And so I'll be building a website here soon. I've been pretty busy with my first client since, leaving the traditional corporate work structure. So I'm pretty excited to go on this journey. And I sure appreciate you inviting me today to talk about something I feel super passionate about.
Good. And definitely read my post today because it was all about websites. So, so everybody, thank you for being here. I'm going to post the link to this and to Kristina's LinkedIn page after this is over. Reach out to her, and of course, definitely reach out to me with any topics that you would like to have other interviews and other conversations on my LinkedIn Live every Monday. And don't forget that we've got an upcoming networking event, a speed networking event. Our next one is December 8th. You can go to fractionals.ai/networking and join us. We'd love to have you. All right. Thank you so much, Kristina. It's been awesome. Good luck with everything. I'm so glad you've joined our fractional community.
Thank you. Have a great day.